Welcome to Surviving Saturday, a podcast about finding hope in the midst of life's disappointments.
We resonate with the powerlessness that Jesus' first followers experienced as they waited between his crucifixion on Friday and his rising on Sunday morning.
We feel led to bring light and goodness into a world that aches and wonders when relief will come.
Here you'll find no easy answers, just honest conversations about actual pain through the lens of a suffering God.
I'm Wendy Osborne, a licensed counselor based in Charlotte, North Carolina.
And I'm her husband, Chris, a counseling intern and family law mediator.
Join us as we wait together for more. Welcome back. I am joined here today with a good friend, Rebekah Vickery. Hi, Rebekah.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
I am so glad you're here. Rebekah is a licensed professional counselor in Seattle, Washington, and she also is facilitator and instructor at the Allender Center. Rebekah, I know that one big part of your focus in your work is church trauma, religious or spiritual trauma. What are the other things that you feel passionate about in the world of healing?
Yeah, that is a big focus of mine. I also work with a lot of women who are coming out of abusive relationships, whether that is, It could be marriage. It could also be an institution or working as an employee for a boss that has a narcissistic or an abusive way of relating or leaving your family of origin in some ways. So I'm very passionate about that. Obviously, a lot of that is tied to my own story. So it's a very personal passion.
Right.
And it's not totally separate than the church trauma. It's just really another way that fundamentalism plays out.
Well, I was having this conversation with a friend the other day who is a local social worker. And, I think when we as humans realize that we have healing work to do in our own lives, that often catapults us to bring healing in very similar places. And so even if it's not the exact same song, the verses tend to be very similar. And so I feel like we develop these passion areas out of our own, what we've lived.
And I think that's something really beautiful about, even thinking about attachment. What we know now through continued research on attachment is that we can develop secure attachment as adults or insecure attachment. And that can happen because we're receiving good care and attachment, but it can also happen because we're offering it. And so there is something to not necessarily using people to get to our own healing, but our own healing is going to happen as we're in these spaces, which I just think I think our brain is fascinating in that way.
I think our brain is fascinating the way God set it up. And, as you say that, I'm remembering back to probably 15 years ago. And at that point, I was not a licensed clinician, but I was doing a lot of what I called at the time lay counseling in the context of the church. And I remember telling people often, I am giving what I am desperate to receive, which is really like a safe space to process the pain of life. And so I totally agree with you that we get healed often in the process of offering healing. And maybe that has something to do with, a more developed sense of self and purpose and identity, and that in itself is healing. But I'm glad you brought up attachment because that's one of the things we had talked about wanting to talk about today. Yeah. And this comes up in my work all the time, whether I'm working with children, foster or adoptive children, or biological children from the start, or adults in their friendships, work relationships, marriages, relationships with their own children. And there's a place that it overlaps with our relationship with God. So let me ask you first, Rebekah, when did you find yourself interested in attachment theory?
I worked at a ministry for this
Okay.
is before becoming licensed, where we actually called it lay counseling as well.
Okay.
Some overlap there.
Yep.
And I didn't know very much about any of the psychological language around it. So I didn't have an understanding that it was called attachment theory or that's what we were doing. But what I did recognize was when we have been deeply harmed in relationship, like healing happens in relationship. And at the same time, I recognized like, oh, there is a lot of overlap in the ways that our harm and our healing happen. So for example, like a lot of it was a residential program for folks who were wanting to work through addiction. And a lot of them had also had experiences of abuse or trauma in a church setting or a family, some form of institution. And so they came into this program where there were guidelines. It was communal living. There were people in authority. So there was a lot that actually felt really similar to their trauma. But it was because of that similarity and then having a different experience in it that brought some healing. So that's what kind of sparked my interest initially, where I was like, what is happening here? Like, there's something to this. And I think at the same time, I was recognizing my own need for healing and wanting to figure that out. Yeah. As a true Enneagram 8 going to a 5 space, I was like, I'm gonna figure this out.
Okay, so we've both now a couple of times used the word spiritual or religious trauma. Okay, and that can be a bit of a trending word right now or phrase. Yeah. And, you know, I'm aware that we're talking about harm coming to people, whether that's individuals or dyads, within the context that we would initially think would bring healing. Yeah. Right? So a church space where people would maybe come to receive safety and healing. So I'd love to hear you maybe give even just not a little more than a definition, but just sort of thoughts on what are we really talking about when we say religious or spiritual trauma?
Yeah. Well, I think about our spirituality, and I know in this context we're talking about it through the lens of Christianity. But I think about our spirituality as our capacity to connect to love, capital L love.
Yeah.
And so that is identity forming. And when there is trauma or abuse that happens in a spiritual context, we are understanding it not just as there's this person or a system in front of us that's harming us, but that this person or system is doing it on behalf of God or on behalf of capital L love. And so it distorts our relationship to what it means to be loved and to love. So that's how I hold it. And it is a trending word right now. And I think in part...
Doesn't mean it's not true. It just means it's getting a lot of press right now.
Yeah. And often when we start to hear people tell stories, there's something in us that resonates with like, oh, I've also experienced that. And so I think that's some of what we're seeing now is we're hearing more and more stories. And there's something in us that resonates with, oh, I also have experienced that. And I didn't have language for it.
Right.
When I think about my own experiences of spiritual abuse, it felt sticky to me because I could look at the person and say, oh, what they're doing is wrong, or it doesn't feel right in my body. But it felt complicated to say that because I also felt, but they're speaking for God. And so if I say something against this person about what they're doing, then am I also going against the Lord? And I think that's where the spiritual trauma piece gets so intertwined.
Yes. I had a client a couple of months ago, and he was talking about a small group leader that he had who was encouraging him. He clearly had a way that he wanted this man to behave in a particular facet of his life. I'm not thinking that the way this man would have wished my client would proceed was wholesale wrong, but he hedged it in a very, I've prayed and this is what I'm believing God is wanting you to do. kind of verbiage way. And the person was left pretty defenseless, right? Like, how do you argue that this other person prayed and God has told them what you should do?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
And so where it left this client was at odds with God. Like, God had not told him this. And it was, let me be clear, it was a gray area. This was nothing along the lines of you're cheating on your spouse and someone is telling you they're very certain God would rather you not continue in secret this way. We're talking more about a style of relating with someone in his life. And it left my client, one, believing that he needed a mediator between himself and God and that he could not be trusted with his own life.
Yeah. That's a really good, and I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, before we get too far down this road ahead of ourselves, these things tend to follow an attachment style that got developed usually in our family of origin. And so I will say a lot of times to families, the early family for a child is a petri dish. It's not like a place where people come to get vaccinated against the woes of the world so that none of those things happen in here. But it's a petri dish where they learn who they are, who others are, what relationship means, what love is, what to be respected and give consent or not means. Okay, we're learning all the things. And depending on how the adults in our lives respond to these needs, we develop a style of attachment. So would you be willing, Rebekah, to go through and sort of give us an overview of the different attachment styles so we can sort of know the categories we're starting with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your description that you just gave, because I think attachment sometimes when we hear it talked about, it's used interchangeably with love. But attachment and love are two different things. Like, attachment is how we learn how to connect, how we stay safe in relationship. And that's different than love. But we generally have either an insecure attachment or a secure attachment. And an insecure attachment is exactly as it sounds. There's a lack of security or trust that we can rely on this relationship to provide what we need. So when we're very young, that can look like not knowing, can I go to my parent and tell them I messed up or I did this thing wrong, and trust that even if they have a reaction to it, there'll be repair. They'll be able to eventually say, oh, like, you're okay. I still got you. Right. If we can't trust that, then there's an insecure connection that we establish. So there's generally two ways we can have an insecure attachment. And of course, this looks so different for each person. So I'm talking in a general sense. But one way is what we would call insecure or preoccupied. And this is where there's that push and pull. Like, I think about it as saying, like, I'm fine, everything's fine, but also I really need you. Like, I need you, don't leave me. I need you, don't leave me. Like, it feels very, we feel very uncertain of, can we trust that this person can stay? But at the same time, it feels really terrifying when they leave. And so we can become very preoccupied in our adult relationships, especially in our primary attachments. So that could be with a spouse or a child or even a parent as an adult child, where we're very, very attuned to what they're doing. And we're paying really close attention to, is this person going to continue to be for me? Can I keep relying on this person? So that's one way of insecure relating. The other insecure attachment is what we would call avoidant. And that also sounds exactly as it sounds. And that's where we've learned when we're really young that we can't rely on our primary caregiver. Usually it's a parent. It could also be an older sibling. It could be a foster parent. It could be any number of people. But whoever is our primary person that we look to receive nurturing and care and even get our basic needs met, if we don't have consistency with them, then we learn, actually, I can't trust people. I have to do it on my own. So that person, and I would fall more into this category, who's more avoidant, is going to withdraw when they feel really overwhelmed or when they need care. You can have two at the same time, and that's where we would call it a disorganized way of relating or disorganized attachment. And that's where our caregivers or our parents were inconsistent in a way that felt dangerous. Sometimes they might be really, really kind, and sometimes they might respond with cruelty or anger, and we can't really know when that's going to happen. So we have to stay in this constant place of both being really avoidant but also drawn in. And it feels very chaotic in our bodies. I can't trust anything or anyone. So those are the insecure attachments. And when I think about secure attachment, I think about, can I trust that there will be repair if there is a rupture or a conflict in this relationship? Can I trust my own sense of what's happening? Like you might feel confused or unsure, but you're not going to have that sense of feeling crazy. Can I feel secure in that this person gets to have their own wants and needs and I get to have mine, and that doesn't threaten the relationship?
Right. So, at this point in a session with anyone who is a parent, they always start to panic. And they're like, but I'm not, I'm rupturing with my children and I don't know if I'm repairing well. Okay, so first, how much of the time, Rebekah, do parents have to get it right for our children to be set up? God set the bar pretty low, right? Yeah. What is there a percentage you tend to operate out of?
Yeah, I mean, and this is what research shows us too. I mean, we really only need around 30% of the time, which is pretty low.
That's what what I tell parents, 30 to 50%, but really on the low end of that. Like, I feel like that's the grace of God, right there in action. The other thing, I know I was reading some research recently, and the idea that we would rupture with our children actually serves a developmentally healthy purpose. And so a lot of times we're like, oh, but I yelled at my child. I'm terrible. Okay, I'm not here condoning yelling at our children, but I am condoning being human, which means that if you engage honestly with other humans, you're all going to lose your marbles at different points. And so I know research has been done in relationships where a baby was never allowed to cry too very long to letting the need to get their needs met. And then, of course, ones who cried for a very long time, and then ones who cried but were tended to within a reasonable amount of time. And I'm being very vague because I don't remember the details of the studies. But the healthiest set of children came from the set of babies who did cry at times, maybe more than their parents would have wished for, but for different reasons. But the parents came and reliably always met the need. So the ones who never had to really get that animated or revved up to get their needs met, they actually did not do as well later in life as the ones who used their voices. And I think even when we think about that as like a predictor, we look at children as developing in a healthy way when they do fuss at their parents a little bit. They do lie to say, what are you going to do with the truth when I bring it and you don't like it? Right? Like, they're not becoming so avoidant. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. The word resilience comes to mind there, right? Where we actually need to experience hardship because otherwise we don't build that sense of, I know that I can both get through this on my own if I need to, but I also can rely on other people to help.
Yes.
So absolutely agree. And I see I
can rely on other people.
Yeah. And I see a lot of young parents in my practice right now. And these are people who maybe are in their late 20s or 30s, even like early 40s, who now have this awareness because they have either been in therapy or they listen to podcasts about attachment, where they really don't want to harm their kids and they want to have good attachment, but then they think the way to do that is to just never rupture, never have any place for human error or make any kind of mistake. But that's actually not setting themselves up or their kids up for success. Like they actually do need to make mistakes with their kids, because the rupture is not what is traumatizing to our bodies or what creates insecure attachment. It's the failure of the person later on to not come back and repair.
Right. To be left alone in the aftermath.
To be left alone.
Rather than to have someone come. So there's a poet that we both enjoy from Asheville, my side of the world. His name is David Gate, and he just came out with a book just a couple of months ago called A Rebellion of Care. And the term, just to briefly mention, he says, a rebellion of care is not a term of naivete. And it's not on the other side of cynicism where you've given up on everything, but it's where you've been through a dark night of the soul and you've seen that trite answers do not pass muster. And you have chosen love, capital L, and care, capital C, for self and for others. And so he's got this poem. My poems tend to be very, very long. And I met him recently.
I love your
and
poems.
He was saying,
as a side note,
thank you. Thank you. You've been one of my kind readers. We were laughing together when I met him because his are very short. Some are one line, but this one is maybe 12 or 14 lines. But this makes me think of the way that an avoidant attachment or a disorganized attachment might begin. And it's called, we are born telling the truth. We are born telling the truth, making cries for our needs. But soon enough, we are taught to stop speaking unless it is urgent. That silence is a lie. We shroud ourselves in independence to hide the helplessness. Yet the truth never changes. I need you. And so that's, that can be child to parent. That can be friend to friend. That can be partner to romantic partner. That can be person to God. But I'm struck by his line in there, we shroud the helplessness. So I talk a lot with my clients about powerlessness and helplessness, and those can be different things. But I'm wondering, what do you do, Rebekah, with that relationship yourself with powerlessness, your clients? Like, that's where we humans spend a lot of time. And we do something with our attachment style in that space.
Yeah. What was coming to my mind when you were reading that was, James Dobson comes to mind as a name. There's other names, like people within the Christian world, evangelical Christian world, who talked about child training through the lens of authority and submission. And so what came to my mind was, it's a baby, right, crying in bed. And there's this method to respond to them that is intended to, like, help the baby to sleep on his or her own. So it's not necessarily ill-intended, but what it does in attachment-wise is, if nobody comes for the baby that's crying, it tells the baby eventually that they are powerless. So it's effective. The baby will stop crying eventually. They might protest first. Yes. But it is effective. But in that powerlessness, it communicates, nobody is coming for me. Yes. Right? And so then that can get played out as adults. Say we're in a conflict with our spouse, or I see this in my therapy practice with clients when there's been a misunderstanding or I failed them in some way. There's not an expectation that, you're somebody that will come back and repair with me.
Yes.
So I actually need to withdraw, or I need to surrender to that sense of powerlessness. And that's where our attachment styles come out, because for some people that can look like going into that fight place, right? I'm going to now try to overpower you because I feel powerless. And for other people, it might be, I need to actually withdraw and hide because I don't trust that you're going to be able to hold my anger or my distress. Yeah. So that's what comes up for me in
Yes.
that. And of course that plays out in our relationship to God and like our spiritual lives, because how could it not?
Right. Right. Well, okay. So then I think about, okay, so this we're also tracking here the development of a human psyche, of a human soul, of a human mind and body. Okay, and so if we are developed in this place where I'm mainly needing to look out for me, I need to hide what I've done wrong because I'm going to get in trouble. So I probably need to lie about it. Whatever the thing may be, I need to not be too forthcoming with my needs because no is so painful. So I'm going to sneak around, and get the needs met. There's a million varieties, but we're developing a different sense of self, which is not one really rooted in safe relationship.
Right.
But then this is the self that in our church context is invited to receive God in. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that. Like we've got this kind of shaky little body trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
And now we need to pray a prayer or make a particular public profession. And I think it can get wonky very quickly. But what do you think?
Yeah. What actually comes to my mind is a story of from my own life that now I hold some endearment around. But I grew up in a Christian context that really emphasized like praying the sinner's prayer. Like these are the words you say specifically that will then, ensure that you are going to have eternal life in heaven. And so growing up in a home where I couldn't trust in the security of attachment, when I first learned about the sinner's prayer, like I prayed it and I was 5 years old, and it was it's a very sweet memory to me still. There was a lot of innocence, I think, there. But then what happened over the years is every time I was in church or I was in some environment where there was an altar call and they talked about people surrendering their lives to the Lord, I started to have all this panic because I felt, I don't know if my prayer stuck. Yep. Like I can't really trust in the security that, God is still there. So I would go up every single time and I rededicated my life to the Lord probably 40 times. But
some pastor got the benefit of you upping the numbers, right, Rebekah? Like some church got to keep counting you and like, we had another 40 conversions, right? But in all seriousness, this anxiety and an anxious attachment was fueling this, right? You couldn't rest.
Yes. I couldn't rest. And so of course then as an adult, right, that gets the stakes feel so much higher because then you're in an abusive context where maybe for me it was being in ministry and having a ministry leader that used the Bible to try to keep me in my place as a woman, right? Like I'm not supposed to have authority. I'm not supposed to have perspective on things, right? But I had already been trained to not trust my own sense of right and wrong. I had been trained to look outside of myself and I couldn't trust where I was looking. So it left me feeling very disoriented and crazy.
Yes. Okay. That makes me think of a little aside. So we've got one of our kids in town and brought their partner with them, who is the most delightful human I know other than all my other kids and their partners. But they were telling me about, I don't know if this is the name of I think this is the name of the podcast. But the name is called, That's What Happens When Women Read. Okay. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I'm going to be tuning in. Okay. And apparently this is a person who was once pretty involved in the fundamental evangelical movement. Okay. And began to raise some questions. And anyway, I'm going to butcher the story, but the bottom line is a remark was made to a woman by a male pastor. This is what happens when women read. Okay. So if
he's not wrong.
Right. Right. He's not wrong. But what's wrong with it, Rebekah? What do you hear?
Right. Well, he's putting so much meaning there, right? To that fundamentalism of I am always right. And therefore you having a different perspective threatens my sense of rightness, right? It's entitlement.
Exactly.
And I could go on, but
you could. Okay. Because here's the thing. It sets, in that situation, to me, it sets faith, God, the pastor, maybe all the above, up as being fragile. Like this woman who now has read and taken an opinion could blow the whole thing up. Like that makes it feel like not something that could be trusted in that easily. So it does a whole lot in me.
Yeah, it's what I call a narcissistic bind, right? Because it leaves this sense of, I was actually just talking to someone about this morning, where myself as a woman, I still go into spiritual spaces or even psychological spaces now and wrestle with, I don't want to be too powerful, but I also don't want to be too small, right? But that's that narcissistic bind where it doesn't allow two people to be right-sized with one another.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so this is funny. I am an Enneagram 4. Okay. And so it was.
Love the force.
It began as a journey of shame and deep-rooted, thickly veiled shame around every part of me. But it has grown with some maturity into a commitment of do not fit me in your box. I refuse to squeeze into that shape. Okay. And so I was meeting with a client the other day, and he's trying to work through his own relationship with powerful people in his life and how they bring out the young part of him, and he begins to carry himself very differently. And so as we were talking, he gave me what I am holding on to as a tremendous compliment. And he said, the way that he experiences me is like, hey, here's my offering. If you take it, great. And if you don't, equally great. And so I was like, okay, that feels like I've grown in some solidity where I don't need to be or get a certain thing. I can be solid in what I offer. And if it's taken and received in a helpful way, great. If it's rejected, I will also be fine. And so I think that's a part of it too.
You're describing a secure attachment with yourself there.
Well, and I said to him, this is a hard fought for way of being.
Yes, I hear that.
I did not enter the delivery room with this way of being. Okay, so I want to come back to...
it's an earned secure attachment.
Yeah, earned secure. Yes. A lot of work we put into these things. I'm like, yes, that was harder to earn than any A in school ever.
And for your listeners, for $49.99, you also can experience earned secure attachment.
Exactly. Just send Rebekah and I, Venmo us $49.99.
Yeah.
And we will send you a certificate of secure attachment.
You have earned secure attachment.
All manner of things will be well, Selah. Okay, so I do want to go a little farther in this attachment with God, because I think that is where it all to me ultimately hinges. Like, if human relationships set us up for the way that we are prone to relate to God, and the two are so intertwined, and we've got a lot more on the line with our faith, right? Like, we have eternal goodness, eternal damnation, right? Like, we have, it's a very black and white, strongly etched out this or that, right? Like, which door are you choosing? And because we've been set up by prior relationships with caregivers, most of us do not immediately have a secure attachment with God. I relate to you that it was very much a nightly sinner's prayer ritual in my little bed. trying to make sure I said it just right so that God didn't reject me on a technicality. Like I didn't know
if
that
you miss
phrase.
A word, you have to start over again.
Oh, I did, Rebekah. Yes.
Yep.
And then I was like, wait, I didn't
that.
cry when I said my sins are as crimson. I didn't cry. I don't think I feel bad. But at the same time, I had learned to not cry because tears were not cared for in my house. So I'm already in this bind, right?
Yeah.
And then later in life, so I'm probably really good at being disorganized in my attachment style. I think I can channel both avoidant and anxious. But the avoidant part was often looked at as maturity. Like I was okay. Yep. I did not need much. I was seen as wise and I could quote scripture just using my head and I was never deeply hurt. And so then it got kind of cemented as this is a way people appreciate me being in my faith.
Yeah, you're modeling, and I'm putting this in quotes, but you're modeling holiness, right? You can...
Yes.
It's the peace that passes all understanding, right? That's how it was reflected back to me of like, you have somehow figured out how to be in this place of just being at peace with what happens.
Yes. Yes.
In reality, of course I'm not, right? I'm trying to respond to all of this distress in the way that I know how, and you weren't either.
Right. Right. So I think of, some of the studies they did on children where they were trying to assess. I don't think this was the still face. I think this was the strange situation experiment, but where they had hooked kids up to electrodes while a caregiver took them into a place like a doctor's waiting room. And then mom ran out to the bathroom and left the kid playing. And then mom came back and they're assessing at all the points of connection and separation, how the child's doing. And the ones who were avoidantly attached had physiological functions like revved way up, heart rate, temperature, breath patterns, but they seemed fine. And I think that's what often happened when people looked at me and thought, she's so mature and grounded. It doesn't like fluster her. Inside, I'm a mess, but people just think I'm very settled. And so I settled for thinking, oh, this is what settled is. Until I realized actually anxiety medicine makes me feel a lot better, when these things are not happening inside of me.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, I know I said I was probably more avoidant earlier. What's more true is I'm probably more disorganized.
High five across the country. There we go.
But that impacted for me, like how I saw God. Because I couldn't trust, like, okay, there's goodness, yes, but also there's punishing, and I can't trust when is going to happen what. So that's why I say the Sinner's Prayer over and over again growing up, because I'm actually terrified. But at the same time, I'm terrified to not say it. So I'm both drawn in, but I'm also really, really scared to be close.
Yes. Yes. What's the fear in being close when you're in that place?
Yeah, for me, it was exposure, right? I'm close. There is a sense of, oh, God loves me. There's intimacy. And now all of my places of vulnerability are going to get exposed. And I'm going to do something that's going to break the relationship because it will be my fault. And then I'm going to get annihilated. I'll get cast out. Right. I'm going to go to hell was the language I had as a child around it. But really the deeper fear there is I'm going to get cast out of this relationship.
Yes. Yes.
And it will be because there's something wrong with me.
Yep. Okay. When you said seen there, I think you used that word. It made me think of Dan Siegel's research around attachment and just interpersonal neurobiology and connection. And he's got the 4 S's. He's big on like acronyms or whatever you would call this, a bunch of letters for a bunch of words. But these 4 S's are, we need to be seen, soothed, safe, and secure. And that would, if those are done reliably, at least 30% of the time, we would end up with a secure connection to this human. Well, I'm thinking, for those of us who had some anxiety in our bodies, in our faith journey, the idea of being seen was very real. Like God's there, right? Like he's like Santa or the elf on the shelf. He's always watching.
Yep.
Right. And he's going to see everything bad I do. So the being seen for those of us with anxiety did not fruit out in safety. It fruited out in fear of then what will happen to me. So then I'd rather avoid them,
Yeah. And when I think about like the disorganized piece of that, there might be times where it felt comforting. At the same time, it's terrifying.
Yes. It can be both at one time, right? Yes. They can vacillate. We can vacillate between the two, or it could be that a part of me feels very, very noticed. And like he's looking at me with eyes of love. And another is like, oh, but when's he going to see the other? I picture like a child that comes in the kitchen and they still have crumbs from the cookie jar. It's like that, like, well, is mom going to like say, hey, sweetie, where have you been all day? I'm so glad to see you. Or is she going to notice, how long is it going to take her to notice the chocolate chips, falling off my chin? And so it's that both at the same time. Yeah. Okay. So, there's another book that I have turned to on this subject, and I've recommended it to quite a few clients, but it's by a counselor in Oregon by the name of Crispin Mayfield. It's called Attached to God. And I think you told me you've listened to his podcast. I've not heard the podcast yet, but I'm very intrigued.
Yeah. It's very fun. He and his spouse, they did a whole series on Adventures in Odyssey one time. They go through like different, the Left Behind series. They do different things around evangelical cultural artifacts. And they'll talk about it through the lens of attachment or how it's impacted by us.
Yes. Well, I'm going to tune in because, my ninth grade teacher in public school read the book Raptured to us. And with a child with anxiety, I was riddled. I'm like, when is it going to happen that I'm separated from everyone? Either I get taken or they do. Which one's better? I don't know.
I'm with you. I read the late great Planet Earth, and that was horrifying.
Yeah. I mean, now I'm like, we have like villains come into schools of a different sort, but I'm like, Mrs. Lovelace sat every day in English class and read Raptured.
That is so
astounding. She could not do that today.
Yeah. No, she couldn't. And this is a side story around the Rapture. I was 5 and had just learned about the Rapture. And I took a nap, and everyone in my family went out to the backyard, and I didn't know they were back there. And I woke up to my neighbor practicing the French horn, and I went and looked throughout the house, and nobody was there, and I thought I had been left behind.
You're like, the angels are playing their hymn. Everyone got taken. What did I do?
I was like, I hear you, Jesus, and I missed it.
Right. Yeah. I'm so sorry. I fell asleep. Oh, gosh, Rebekah.
Yeah.
All right. So. Okay, Tyler, we're back. So in this book, I pulled up one of the quotes that had been meaningful to me, and he's talking about, he's overlaying an attachment style onto our relationship with God and our faith, because as we've been saying, it really has an impact. So he starts by quoting a pretty well-known female theologian who's authored a lot of books, who has said in some of her writing, we must love God with our minds, allowing our intellect to inform our emotions rather than the other way around. Okay. And I feel like this is a lot of Western theology, right? Like, read your scripture. It's a lab report. If you read it well, you'll find the bottom line. Yes. There is a truth, end of story. Believe it, and then conjure up some emotions around it to embody it. But what he goes on to say is, But if we only love God with our minds, we miss out on the spontaneity of authentic, intimate relationship with God that we see throughout the Psalms and the rest of scriptures. When we listen to our hearts and share our feelings with God, we find connection with a divine parent who longs to hear our emotions and help us understand them. What do you think about that?
Yeah. It feels so invitational. Like, I think that's the first, that's the first experience I have listening to that, is there's something that feels very warm and invitational and connecting versus the original quote from the theologian sounds more, it sounds colder, right? It's that sense of, I have to figure this out.
Yes.
And then if I figure it out, maybe I'll have that sense of relationship, versus what Kristen is saying is, I start with relationship.
Yes, I start with relationship. Well, and I mean, that's the God of scripture that I read about. Like, he was committed to relationship from the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think this last year, I've begun to do a lot of thinking around what is the definition I hold of the Bible, of scripture? Is it a story of a relationship of a God with his people? Is it a story of why we should be deathly scared of snakes? Is it how to avoid hell? Like, what is it? Right? Is it a book of rules that I need to follow? And I'm landing on the first one. It's the journey of a relationship between a God and his people, or her people.
Yeah.
Their people. Yeah.
And I think about how stories, I mean, whether it's stories in the Bible or fairy tales that we read growing up, or stories that are told about our family history, the family stories that get passed down. There's so much meaning that we make of that. And so much of that meaning is rooted in how we've actually learned how to attach in relationship. And so where I think about how these stories of a God in relationship with his people, her people, right, can get distorted, is when there are people that start to put meaning to that to fit their own categories of attachment, right, and abuse and entitlement. So I feel the risk there, and I also feel the beauty.
Say a little bit more.
Yeah.
Say a little bit more there.
Yeah, like, I'm coming in as a 9-year-old. I'm thinking about a particular time, right, where I'm going up to the front of the church to recommit my life to Jesus. And I'm thinking really hard about what sins I have committed. Now, looking back, I'm like, what sins was I committing at 9? I don't know.
Right.
But I'm being so earnest there.
Exactly.
And because I've heard this story, right, about, in one lens, it could be love, right? Like, there's an invitation to relationship with God that could be really, really invitational, kind. But my attachment experience within my family, within other places, had taught me actually intimacy is dangerous, right? And so the meaning that I'm putting to it isn't just, this is an invitation to love. It's, I have to be really, really good, or I'm going to get cast out. The closer I am, actually, the more in danger I am.
Yep.
So that's an example that comes to mind of how we can distort, or how these things can be distorted for us.
The closer I am, the more danger I'm in. And can you put just a little bit more flesh on that without telling more than you wish?
Yeah. You mean like my own experience and how that informed it?
How that came to be. I mean, I know it could be as simple as, the closer I am, the more my parents are going to see what I do, and I'll be in trouble.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious where that developed.
Yeah. Well, a small piece of my family life, and of course it's not the whole of it, but a small piece of it was that we were in a context of Christianity that had a patriarchal model. So my dad, right, is the one that, like, ultimately has the final say over what happens in the home. My mom has some authority, but ultimately she's going to bend towards my dad, right? And then as children, there is a sense of powerlessness. Like we're not the ones in charge, right? So there's an authoritarianism like context that I'm living in where I'm already trained to know, like, I need to obey. I need to do the right thing. I need to look the right way in order to maintain some connection that feels good. Right. So the closer that I am to, say, my dad, right, he's kind of at the top of this patriarchal structure, the more he's going to see the ways, my humanity, and the ways that I'm not measuring up to that. Right. And so that starts to be encoded in my body as intimacy is actually dangerous here. But at the same time, to leave the family also feels dangerous. Right. And so I'm caught in this predicament that plays out when I hear the altar call.
Yes. This predicament, I go down front, and also going down front means I'm really seen by God, and I've already sinned and cost him his life. But then the only way to be safe is to say the prayer again. I can feel it.
Yes. And my little heart loved Jesus and was also terrified of him. Right. And that's that disorganized attachment.
Yes, Rebekah, that is so tragically, but really well put. My little heart loved Jesus and was also terrified. Right? Like now my heart loves Jesus, and I'm often also very confused by him. Like far more than I've ever been as I've owned, the reality of life. Okay, so as we're wrapping up here, one thing that's coming up, the other day I was doing a little bit of writing around children going back to school and what that's meaning for the families I work with. And it really dovetails with what you just said. If you've got dad, you've got mom, you've got children. But then a little while ago, you mentioned, our own attachment style now shows up in our current relationships, and particularly with our children. And the way we relate out of our own attachment style is developing an attachment style in them, right? And so I was thinking of, I'm hearing a lot of stories of bedtime is awful, or this child won't get out of bed, or this child is coming home melting down. But there's so much at stake for the parents, right? Like there's I, or more likely my spouse, screwed up at bedtime, and that's why it was such an ordeal, right? And so it's like I've got some anxiety in my attachment of how I've got to do parenting right, and now we've messed it up, and now he won't get out of bed, and now the teacher is going to think we're that parent because we're late again.
The stakes are so high.
And then the child's getting off the bus and being rude. They're so high, right? And so what would your word be, your sentences maybe, to people who are feeling the impact of their own unhealed attachment style now affecting their children? Again, we're not trying to avoid all ruptures, but we want to see that we're bringing something into this relationship that is probably more about our own anxiety or avoidance than really about loving our child and bringing soothing and safety and security to them as we see them.
Well, and it does make sense. And I feel so tender as you're saying that. And just very, I just feel gentle about that. Like I feel how high the stakes are and how terrifying it is to not want to do harm. And at the same time, we're so human and we can't help attaching the ways that we've learned. And just feeling all of that. So there's a lot of kindness there that I'm feeling. And I also think about research now shows us this, but I think we have intuitively known this for a long time. But the ability of us as parents to be able to care for our own selves and hold our own humanity with kindness is one of the biggest predictors of secure attachment with our kids. And I think in our effort to not want to do harm, we become so focused on our children, or in other contexts, it could be my clients or my parishioners or whoever it may be, right? That we actually lose sight of. It starts with us. It starts with actually holding the young parts of us with a lot of kindness. And so in that moment when there's anxiety over I've ruptured, or my spouse is ruptured in this way, and now I feel conflicted because I can anticipate all of the steps that are coming after. Like, can we pause to actually just be with ourselves and say, oh, I see you. Like, I see the panic, the young panic that comes up in me.
Yep. Yes. Yes. A hearty amen to that. And I feel like the conversations that I tend to have with parents more often is not the list of like how to parent that they initially come in asking for. So what do I do when my child has a lot of meltdowns and can't regulate his emotions? We both need coping skills. You might, but mainly you need grace for self that will then find its way into grace for this child that you're parenting that of course you don't know what to do with. Right? Because humans are incredibly complicated.
Humans are
from very young to very old.
That is the truth.
Right? Yeah. And so no duh that we don't know what to do, but we are called to love. Yeah. So, Rebekah, what a treat. What a treat.
I love talking with you. I could talk with you all day.
Talking to you. I know, maybe we'll come up with another topic and talk again.
The Surviving Saturday podcast is brought to you by Nurture Counseling PLLC, a counseling, teaching, and training center based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. We help families flourish one story at a time. Nurture Counseling provides counseling intensive for couples, conflict resolution coaching, story work groups, seminars, workshops, and retreats to provide a safe and welcoming context for exploring the agonizing experiences of pain, brokenness, and evil that disrupt our lives, and that God often uses to nurture deeper trust and intimacy with Him and with each other. You can find us online at www.nurturecounseling.net.